Carla, we're all set, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks so much, Russ. And hello, everybody. I'm Carla Lane. I'm the Vice President of the Higher Education Sector for FGDLA. And we want to welcome you to be with us today. We have an exciting presentation lined up for you. Just a few housekeeping things to start with. I just wanted to tell you about a little bit about FGDLA. We are a nonprofit. We're a professional association formed to provide the development and the application of distance learning in the federal government. We actively foster collaboration and understanding among those involved in leveraging technology and instructional media in support of the education and the training needs of the federal government. Our membership is derived primarily from individuals employed by the agencies within the federal government. We invite you to join with us if you're not already a member. Membership is free. And our web address is fgdla.us. All right, Russ.
Yes, Carla, and just finish. Stop sharing.
Okay, I'm not yet. So all I want to do is advance to my next slide, but it won't let me do that. So I'll just move on. I wanted to tell you about some upcoming events that we've got on the schedule. We have a presentation by Zoom with Dr. Lance Ford. He's been with us before. That will be on September 20th. On October 18th and November 15th, FGDLA is trying something really new. We're going to offer a two-part workshop on the use of artificial intelligence for training and education. You know, it's really a hot topic and lots of things surrounding it. We've had a couple of discussions about it, but we decided we would offer a certificate for it. And so anyone who participates in all 4 hours of the workshop will receive the certificate from FGDLA. On December 6th, FGDLA will present the awards that honor excellence in training. Submission forms are available now, and Dr. Jolly Holden, who's on the call today, will be the project director, manager, and executive vice president for everything that we do for that. So we look forward to rewarding excellence in education. We are so proud that FGDLA has Zoom as a sponsor. We're one of our valued sponsors.
And Carla, Moodle as well, both Zoom and Moodle.
Yeah, I'm planning on discussing that, Russ. Read the script.
Oh, of course.
So, but Zoom has been with us for a while now, and we really want to thank them. So, Russ, would you like to say something about Zoom?
I think I should be reading the script next time, Carla, I promise. But anyway, it's an honor to be of service with you and the people that are joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you. And today we are announcing that Moodle has become a valued new sponsor for FGDLA. We're so happy and so proud of it. We celebrate it in our new collaboration by offering today's workshop and showcasing the amazing things that you're able to do with Moodle. You know, I've used Moodle for years and I think it's a fabulous product. So I'm really happy to have John and Jim here today talking about it. So Moodle's U.S. team has significant experience implementing Moodle as a key component for federal and DoD clients, as envisioned in ADL's Total Learning Architecture project. Moodle has experienced rapid adoption throughout the federal and the DoD markets, including the U.S. Army, U.S. Air Force, FEMA, DHS, and the VA. Our presenters are John DeFonso, who is Moodle's federal lead for strategic accounts. John has been with Moodle for 8 years and worked in EdTech for 15 years. And Jim Mezzanotte, I'm probably not pronouncing his name correctly, has been in for years in EdTech, collaborative innovation. He sees his mission as helping organizations make the most of technology for teaching and for learning. John and Jim, we want to welcome Moodle as our new sponsor and to thank you for agreeing to present to the FGDLA members and friends today. And the floor is yours. So let me stop sharing. And John, go right ahead.
All right. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Russ, for the introduction. And yes, we are very proud to be sponsors for this opportunity and for the opportunity to present on behalf of Moodle today. So let me just get my bearings straight with all the different buttons I got to figure out to share my screen here. So bear with me.
Okay. I see some people in the audience. Another person with the name Carla. Hello, Carla. I see Ed Walsh, who is one of my students. Ed, thank you for joining us today.
Quick visual check here. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can see it perfectly. Thank you, John.
Thank you. All right, I guess we should get going here, right? So let me just go through a quick agenda because we do have quite a bit of time here and we got a lot to cover. I'm going to just do an introduction about Moodle US, Moodle HQ, some of our offerings, especially how they align to government and federal DoD initiatives. Just gloss over some relevant clients that continue to grow each time we meet throughout the year here. And some of our technology partners that also continue to grow as we continue to evolve our solutions as part of that TLA that Carla touched on in the introduction. Also, some of our federal business partners that we work with, most of the time we're working under federal partners like as coming in as subcontractors, working with them as primes for some of the larger federal projects we find ourselves getting into. And then just a couple other key projects we're involved with, some of where we're going through with our business strategy in the federal space. And then I'm gonna go through a bit of a brief demo on Workplace for Government. And then what I'm hoping is that we have about 30 minutes left of our time today to open the floor up, right? Because this is really about you as much about us, to hear any questions or to have you all share any particular use cases that you find yourselves in where learning platforms like Moodle can solve. So let's kick it off here. So a bit about Moodle, right? So Moodle has been around for about 20 years and we've been providing open source technology and learning software for 20 years. It was invented by Martin Dugamis, who's shown here on the right. And they've been providing this open source platform basically for free for almost 2 decades, right? And so Moodle, by way of further introduction, that for those that might not be aware, is a 100% open source LMS, open source learning management system that you can download and run completely free and completely independent of Moodle, which we find a lot of clients do. And so is a bit of, we stand sort of alone in a very crowded LMS space in providing, open technologies for those to deploy and use however they wish. Moodle is the most widely used LMS in the world. It has, we sort of describe Moodle more as a platform than, it's also a community, right? So because it's open source, people can contribute. You can actually participate with Moodle in a couple of different ways. You could be a consumer, you could be a participant, or both, right? So you can contribute to Moodle in the way of plugins, which we'll touch on later, or you can just download and consume Moodle completely independent, again, as I mentioned before, on your own. We are Moodle US. We are a division of Moodle and provide services and solutions around open source Moodle. And so Moodle has a reputation of being free, but the analogy we hear out there is that it's free isn't like a free puppy, right? And so clients will come to us and say, hey, we understand Moodle's free, but we also need help, right? We need infrastructure, we need hosting, we need expertise, we need integration help, we need development and that sort of thing. And so that's where we come into play. We are a services division under Moodle HQ to help clients get the most out of the system in the way of implementation, integration, and that really leads to my next slide here. Hosting, learning design. So I'll just start from the left here. I would say about 99% of our clients are on our AWS platform, right? They'll come to us and say, look, we've been running Moodle open source, but we really don't want to deal with this anymore. You take our Moodle platform, you put it on your infrastructure, you take care of all the back-end care and feeding of Moodle with patches and security, and then we'll focus on what we do, right? And so that's a core part of what we offer here at Moodle is providing that hosting platform that's secure, scalable, reliable, so that our clients don't have to deal with that. We also have a couple deployments that options for our clients. We can host in our standard infrastructure, which is an AWS FedRAMP at the moderate level by way of AWS, or at the GovCloud level. It's worth pointing out that when I mentioned FedRAMP, we as an organization are not FedRAMP, nor is the software FedRAMP through Moodle, but we utilize hosting through AWS, which does have FedRAMP qualifications. And so I just wanted to make that very clear because I know we have a federal audience on hand here. Another key service that we offer is integration, right? Moodle, as you mentioned, plays in a world of that total learning architecture and like a central hub to other complementary technologies that exist out there, right? So most of our clients will want to take Moodle and tie it into other types of third-party systems, whether that's CRM system, HRS system, registration systems, synchronous tools, e-commerce. I mean, you name it. Moodle sort of serves as like that plug strip, if you will, or like your stereo receiver in your entertainment center for all these other things to tie into, if you will. Another very important unit of our organization is our learning design division. These folks are amazing and highly skilled, not only Moodle experts, but they're instructional designers. They're folks that can help you get the most out of Moodle when you're deploying Moodle, in the way of designing good courses that are engaging, making sure that you're setting your courses up with the right assessments and outcomes. And because Moodle is an ecosystem of plugins, we also sort of serve as like a tour guide for making sure that when you're going through an implementation or using our learner design experts, that we're recommending the right plugins to put into the system as well. Because Moodle, in many ways, is somewhat similar to like your iPhone or your Android device, right? Like you take it out of the box and it does all the things an LMS really should do, but there's this whole back end app store, if you will. We call it the Moodle plugins library, but it's the same concept where people from all over the world contribute plugins to Moodle that change experiences Moodle, either from a learner, either from a trainer in terms of course design, or an administrator. So we'll touch on that a little bit later. I'll show you an example of this plugin library, but Moodle, with the concept of a plugins directory, can almost become like, Moodle can be like a box of Legos in the sense that like it's not an LMS in a box. There's a lot where you have to fit your requirements and squeeze your requirements into an LMS. Moodle, by way of its plugins and its flexibility, can sort of adhere to practically any kind of online learning use case or initiative that you bring to us, whether it's blended learning or whether it's whatever it may be. So we'll touch on that a little bit more. We provide support, right? So our clients come to us, in addition to hosting and some of these other key services, they want to know that once they're on our platform, or in many cases when we're working with DoD, they're installing Moodle on-prem, that they have a support business unit to go to when they have questions and when they want to install upgrades or when they want to install plugins. These are experts on the back end of Moodle US who will be there to help respond to any kinds of issues or problems or questions you might have as you continue to use and adopt Moodle throughout your agency or your institution. So like any LMS company out there, the core pillars of what they offer are hosting and support. We offer hosting and support in a range of these other services around open source Moodle. Because Moodle is so highly customizable, there's also the opportunity for you to do a lot of different things to Moodle in the form of development. So we have a big development team here who can help you if you come to us with a development request, which commonly comes in the form of a custom plugin of some sort, or you need to look at specific aspects of the code to work with our development teams on potential enhancements and that sort of thing. So we have a development team that tends to work very closely with, particularly DoD, that pushes us in the way with innovation and the way Moodle is aligned to those types of deployments. And then, when it comes to implementation, that's another real key part of what we do for clients, right? Because Moodle is so highly configurable, whether you're implementing Moodle on-prem or whether you are using our SaaS version of Moodle, the implementation is probably the most critical part of what we do for you to ensure that we are tailoring an onboarding and a training that is designed to address your specific business use cases and the learning outcomes that you want your users to experience when they're in the system, learning or are actively engaging in content and that sort of thing. So that this implementation that we provide is just really just designed to ensure that you will drive deep and wide adoption of the platform across your institution or your agency. And then everything's about reporting and analytics. We're going to get into this topic a bit more. We're going to sink our teeth into that because Moodle can pretty much provide all the data you want out of the box, but there are partners and plugins that come into play where Moodle data can then be sent into other systems to take those analytics and take them to a whole new stratosphere. So we'll talk a little bit about that further in this session. Relevant clients, these are some of the folks we're working with, notably, U.S. Coast Guard's coming aboard, working with Army on a major development project. U.S. Air Force is probably our longest standing client, going on about 4 years now. We are working with DHS and a variety of other state and federal agencies, and I'm missing probably a dozen or so more of other logos that I can plop on here. So Moodle for Government is really what we are offering. Moodle, we here at Moodle as a SaaS organization and as an organization that can deploy Moodle on-prem, we serve virtually every type of client that exists out there, right? We're serving Moodle is being used in colleges and universities and K-12, and it's being used in for-profit, nonprofit, state, local, you name it. But it's also starting to rapidly grow across the government. And so what we're seeing is a gravitation to Moodle Workplace, because Moodle Workplace does extend certain components and functions and features that are not part of the core Moodle open platform offering. And I'll touch on that more. But what we're seeing in the government is, in some cases, federal agencies can come to us and leverage our SaaS because we could deploy on like the GovCloud. But primarily, when we're working with federal agencies, particularly in DoD, they're deploying on-prem. So they already appreciate the fact that we can deploy in a couple of different ways. It is worth mentioning that we are in the process, early stages of heading down the FedRAMP path, where we do plan on providing a FedRAMP offering of Moodle Workplace for our clients. We're in the early stages of a 3PAO and going through the assessors. So those on this call today that understand that FedRAMP process know that it's very expensive and it's very time consuming. So, but because this market is rapidly growing for us, we recognize that this is a strategy that we plan to head down this year. So I think one of the things that is top of mind for federal agencies that are coming to us for Moodle is that they appreciate the fact that because Moodle's open source and it's quote unquote free, they appreciate the fact that through Moodle US, they can work with the mothership, if you will, right? They can work with the very organization that develops their software so that they're not painting themselves in corners because of the flexibility of Moodle, and they can get guidance and they can get consulting and ensure that they're deploying Moodle not only from a technical standpoint on-prem, but also, you know, from a functional standpoint, that they're getting the right guidance to drive the right adoption of this system across their enterprise because of how flexible and how configurable Moodle can be. I think prior to maybe the last couple of years, I felt like, you know, I've been with Moodle for about 8 years. I felt like that a lot of agencies, particularly in the government, didn't realize there was a services division in the U.S. that was directly or uniquely set up to support any organization out there that's deploying Moodle. So we're happy to see that, and that's part of the point of this session. Really, is to drive awareness of the fact that we exist, and if you're running Moodle and you need help, we're here for you in a variety of different ways. Whether you're running Moodle on-prem, whether you want to use our SaaS, or do you want to run Moodle Workplace on our SaaS, or run Moodle Workplace on-prem, if that makes sense. But that's really one of the things we keep hearing consistently from our clients in this space, is that there is just a great amount of appreciation that they can work directly with Moodle itself, and they can stay close to, you know, where Moodle is going from a development standpoint, where they're innovating, where roadmap is going, and they can get support. So Moodle Workplace, unlike core Moodle, again, is going to extend certain features, certain functionality that is not in core Moodle. And it's worth pointing out again that Workplace is only available through Moodle US. It's not like something you can download like core Moodle, and it is not something you can get through any other entity at this point. This is an iteration that is developed by Moodle HQ and delivered through Moodle US for the US marketplace. And it extends, I would say, 6 major features or functions that sit on top of the core Moodle code base. So I want to just emphasize that Workplace is not a separately developed instance of Moodle. It's still the same Moodle core code base. It's just a set of plugins that sit on top of Moodle core that extends certain functionality. And some of those key components are programs, and I'll get into this in the demo and I'll show this, allow you to take your courses that you're traditionally used to using in Moodle and organize them into a like a curriculum or a learning track. And that allows you to set up these programs where now you can control how users go through a set of courses and what happens at this end of that program. A complementary component of that, number 2, is certifications. Certifications sit as a wrapper around a program that allow you to take any particular program you build and create a certification or recertification around it. That's very important when you're rolling out programs that, you know, maybe they're compliance programs or they're recertification programs or anything where you feel that your constituents or your learners need to go through these programs on some sort of frequency. You know, it could be that you set up a program that has a set of 5 courses, and then the certification will be that they get re-enrolled in that program, but now they get access to maybe an advanced set of courses, or courses that, you know, or maybe they have to take the same set of courses all over again. You have that sort of flexibility, but as you can see, the Workplace starts moving into that area of certification, recertification, and compliance. Workplace also allows you now to model out, number 3, your organizational structure. So you can create relationship models or hierarchies in your system, where you can create relationships between learners and managers or whatever role you have in your agency, so that you can create these relationships and monitor how people that might be reporting to you or are progressing through their learning journeys, or just, you know, create any kind of like organizational taxonomy that you can possibly imagine. And why that's important is because number 4, the dynamic rules, is a governance in Moodle Workplace that basically is like the traffic cop. It basically says, it allows you to create like these conditional flows in the system, or like an if this then that. Like if in my organizational structure, I have somebody that has this role that's in this department or that's in this division, then I can put them in this program or this certification. Or we can create rules that say, if my learners complete this certification, then they get this badge or this skill or this competency. So the dynamic rules sort of triangulates into these other key components of workplace to establish automation, flow, and really allows you to sort of not have to babysit the system, right? So you can create all these kinds of conditional situations for when things happen, when learners do certain things in the system. Maybe they haven't been active in the system for such a period of time. You can create a rule that says, send them a notification, tell them to get back into their course. Or so there's a number of different things that you can do with that. We'll get into that a little more detail, but that's an important component of the system. I talked a little bit about certification design. This is just your ability to create your certification templates and create rules that allow you to issue those digital certificates to those that are complete in either number 1 or 2 programs and certifications. Number 5 is probably one of the most compelling parts of workplace that we get our clients coming to us for. And multi-tenancy is like a game changer, right? It almost causes you now as an owner of workplace to step back and look at the LMS more broadly or more from the enterprise, because multi-tenancy now allows you to take your Moodle platform and slice it up into as many tenants as you want. And these tenants are individual spaces that can have their own dashboards, their own logos, URL, domain name, a single sign-on, learners, curriculum. It's basically like being able to launch another LMS on a single, on the same instance, but each tenant is going to be completely separate from one another. So let me use a silly analogy. You can create a tenant for McDonald's, one for Burger King, one for Nike, one for Pepsi, right? And each one of those tenants can have their own logos, their own learners, their own curriculum, and be completely separate from one another. So your audience or your learners that are in Burger King are not going to see anyone that's in McDonald's, right? So there's complete separation. However, from the super admin role, you can take courses in curriculum and push them out to different tenants, right? So there's a bit of versioning in Moodle when it comes to course versioning, in that you can create courses or programs or certification tracks and push them to different tenants. So you're not having to, so you can easily share that kind of stuff across, across your tenants. I would another analogy. I'm a big into analogies, but like the way to think of multi-tenancy is almost like you're a landlord in an apartment building, right? Like you can, each tenant is going to have, or apartment space is going to have their own, could be separate from one another, and you can decorate in the way you want with courses and that sort of stuff. But it's not like you can go out and change like the foyer or the landscaping out front, right? So you're still under that parent tenant, if that makes sense. And also Workplace provides advanced reporting. It doesn't replace the reporting in core Moodle. It just provides an advanced custom reporting that I'll touch on later. Why don't I just take a quick pause, Carla or Russ, and just see if there's any questions that I can address so far, or, before I start moving on to other parts of the presentation.
There's been a discussion going on in the chat. Jim's been answering some questions in there. Jim, you want to come off mute and talk a little bit about what you were doing in the chat room?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Hi, John. Well, there was a couple questions about competencies, and so yes, so Moodle does have a competency mechanism, and typically what you do with that is you would put together a set of competencies, and then that would be called a learning plan, and you would assign a learning plan to a learner, to a user. The competencies can be, in terms of the evidence of competencies, they can be attached at the course level, and they can also be attached at at the activity level. So if there's a particular, like a quiz or some other thing that's happening in the course, also can be tied to a competency. That can be one to many. So, typical for competency, the competency approach, you want to have multiple assessments, multiple opportunities for someone to show that they're gaining mastery in something. The dynamic rules in workplace also have allowed us to kind of bring in that competency piece into the workplace, structure as well, because you can assign users to learning plans based on any number of different, filters. So it could be that, go use that organizational tool, that the structure that John was talking about. It could be I have a specific position in a specific department, and so that means I'm going to get a specific learning plan, because that's part of my job role, and that's those are the competencies I need to master. So that can be automated. You can also have it set that it might be that if I finish a particular program or certification, that I am then automatically awarded a competency. So you can do that as well.
Yeah, it's a great segue into the next slide. And Jim, happy to have you chime in here, because Jim literally is on the front lines working as our subject matter expert for all of our major DoD implementations. And that is a key area that a lot of our clients are, especially those that are sort of moving into their sophomore or junior year of using Moodle, right? The first year is usually about getting the system up, getting the bones, getting courses up, and then they start moving into things like competencies, and that is definitely a topic that we can really provide a lot of guidance around. But some of the use cases that we're seeing, or that come up in terms of what Moodle is solving across the federal space is things like upskilling, readiness, competencies, right? Career development, OTJT, on the job training, career field education, those types of things. Jim, is there any other sort of major focus use case areas that I may have skipped across? That, I mean, again, you're day to day on the front lines of these projects. So
I think and we might be getting ahead of ourselves, but one thing that we've seen with, for instance, the Army and some of these other DoD projects we work on, is that you want to bring together the ability of a learner to map out their own path, their own learning path. So that's the other piece of this, right? Where you can if you've got a learning catalog, where you can say, okay, how am I going, I need to know how to pick the curriculum I'm going to work on. And so one way to do that is to have it set up so that you can say, okay, I want to filter by, for the Army, it's like I have a specific learning plan that's tied to my job role. Show me all of the courses I can take that are associated with that learning plan. Show me what that's about. So it's a good way to kind of, for upskilling, especially in career development, that's kind of how you would do it, right? Because the whole idea in those cases is that it's like, okay, what are those skills that I want to retain? If I want to reach another ladder in my career, what competencies do I need to master? And you start there, and then the system tells you what what the curriculum would be and what it would look like, what you need to do to provide evidence that you can master it.
Thanks, Jim. All right, moving along. As I mentioned earlier, Moodle is highly customizable. And what I mean by customizable is just with the ever-growing library of plugins, which is up probably beyond 1,600 at this point. There's a lot of different things that you can put into Moodle, and that's what we're here for. We're here to make sure that the way you adjust Moodle is being vetted off of the experts, those that know the system inside and out. And we ensure that these plugins are being added in a way that aligns to the kinds of problems you're trying to solve. So I kind of talked about this, but Moodle is, again, going back to how extensible it is. Everything wants to integrate with Moodle. And so Moodle also has very powerful APIs that allow you to tie Moodle to, all different types of systems that you might want to tie together as part of that, total learning ecosystem. Offline is obviously very important, particularly in the federal space. And Moodle kind of prides itself on its ability to be able to still have the ability to engage even offline, because with the Moodle mobile app, you can take your course and download your course. And when you get back into connectivity, upload your learning activities, engagements, and your assessments and that sort of thing. So Moodle has a really good story around anywhere, anytime access and mobile device. Moodle's also available in the iOS and Google Play Store, so that you can download it and then without free of charge, and connect it to your agency's use of Moodle. We also offer some additional services around mobile, so we can create custom mobile branding apps for you as well. So that come with a little more analytics in the back end. But this is a big area of it's a pretty big topic of interest for a lot of our clients, particularly in this space. Let's move into our TLA, right? Our technology partners that we commonly see ourselves kind of getting together with and tying ourselves together with in some of the larger implementations we find ourselves in within the federal market. The first one I would note is Brickfield Labs, right? This is a plugin that it's already part of Moodle. You turn it on, turn it off. Moodle does a very good job of adhering to accessibility standards, through a VPAT, through the, Jim, this is certainly an area that you can speak on. But I like, Jim, what you always say, accessibility is not a state, right? It's something that is always ever changing. And one of
it's a process.
It's a process, right? And so one of our certified, recognized, Moodle recognized certified integrators is called Brickfield Labs. And what this does in a nutshell is basically you turn it on, and as you're doing course design in Moodle, it basically scans and makes sure and ensures that your course design is adhering to accessibility standards. If there's any gaps, if there's going to be any, impairment, like, problems or issues with the way, users who are coming in with accessibility need to make sure that they're engaging with the course. Jim, I know this is an area of expertise for you, so I'll let you build off of what I just shared there.
Sure. Just a couple things to say here is probably to make a distinction between system accessibility and content accessibility. So on the system side, just Moodle gets audits. I think it's typically like typically on like an annual basis, we have an independent auditor who audits the system for any accessibility issues. And at this point, we've gotten from that auditor, we have compliance for AA compliance for WCAG accessibility. I put a whole bunch of word salad out there, but if anyone knows, that's the kind of the standard global, the global standard for accessibility, and it's what the 508 accessibility standard in the United States is based on. So we do that, and we actually work continuously throughout the development process for any new features that Moodle creates. We work with that independent vendor to as much as we can ensure that what we're doing is accessible even as we're building it, so that we don't have to circle back and fix things. What's really cool about Brickfield Labs is that you get into what happens with content, because that's the system itself can be accessible, but there's a learning management system has a lot of content usually, And there's a lot of places where it could be less than compliant with the accessibility. So one thing that's really good about this this Brickfield toolkit is that it will find it will scan your course, but it will also give you options for how to fix it. So you basically can go in if you're a content developer, and you get this report card from this kit, and you can just go ahead and close the gap on anything it's not accessible.
Yeah. And this is these are sort of like electives, right? That when I'm working with a client and we're talking about Moodle, I'll always ask, what is your, accessibility strategy, right? Like how critical is this to your, because we have some clients that come to us from legacy LMSs that just don't adhere to accessibility at all. And Moodle becomes very attractive to them because they need, like, it's critical for them to create to adhere to accessibility standards with their LMS. So Brickfield just allows us, like some of our other key recognized integrated partners, takes these kinds of experiences to another level, right? And so, for example, IntelliBoard, right? Moodle is going to give you tons and tons of reports and analytics, but IntelliBoard comes in just like the way they're going to be used in the Coast Guard and the Army and the Air Force, and it takes report data that's coming out of Moodle, and they serve it up into a whole new stratosphere, right? That gets more into predictive learning analytics and visualization, right? Like IntelliBoard is going to provide you with highly attractive data visualizations and automations and schedules and that sort of stuff. So I would say IntelliBoard is probably one of the most popular paid plugins that exists out there in that sort of Moodle ecosystem of plugins, right? Again, going back to that App Store analogy, like 90% of the plugins that are in Moodle are in the Moodle plugins directory are free, right? You can download them. Well, I mean, if you're under our SaaS, you don't download them. You come to us as a support ticket and ask us to install it, and we vet that through test and development instances before we move into production. But this is IntelliBoard and Brickfield are examples of sort of like companies out there that say, hey, we can take Moodle analytics to a whole new stratosphere. So we built a company around it. We become a certified integrator, and you can add this to your environment by a flip of a switch if you want to. It's optional, if that makes sense.
John, let me just bring up on the line today is Helen Chamberlain, who is largely responsible for a lot of what went on with accessibility for the federal government. Helen, come off the phone or come off mute for a minute, and because she was saying she thinks what you all are doing is really good, and I can tell you she is a hard taskmaster. She made us crazy trying to even set up the website for FGDLA because it wasn't accessible enough. So Helen, what have you got to say here?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Carla, for the compliments. No, from what you guys were talking about, I think you're doing really great. And I like the fact that you are working with the accessibility as you go along to not have to go back and correct things. Because when I was working for the federal government, we were constantly, of course, we were in the infancy of all of this. We were constantly working with organizations and products that hadn't done it, and then they had to go back in, and that creates all kinds of problems, as you know. But so I think you guys are doing great, and I'm really pleased to hear that you even brought it up in your presentation.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, Carla.
Thanks, Helen.
Yeah, we absolutely recognize the importance of this. Said simply, it's like, without accessibility in your LMS is like not having
cereal with no milk.
or like handicap access without like in a building or something. Like it's almost like, Moodle is used. I think this ties also to the fact that Moodle is used so extensively in in academia across the planet, right? So Moodle is the most widely used system in the world, right? And especially in academia. So I think this becomes I think a lot of where accessibility was born out of it when it comes to sort of requirements, I think was driven a lot from our academic clients. And I think as we've been finding ourselves moving into these other markets, that it's equally as important, but sometimes often overlooked. And what we're hearing is that a lot of legacy LMS systems out there kind of fall short here, or don't really have this as a point of development, or like a point of interest in their roadmaps and so whatnot.
And
So
just as an added piece too is, well, two things. First, it's any kind of an enterprise platform like Moodle, it's a big job. It's a constant, it's not really a job, right? It's just like we were saying, it's a process. But typically what we do is, we're always looking to test whatever new functionality we have, but we always circle back to, we're kind of, that's how we do it. We're constantly looking at, is there something we didn't test? Can we bring that in? And it's always a little bit of the new, a little bit of the old to increase our testing coverage. And one place where we've even brought it in a little bit to like content development is, as John had mentioned, with multi-tenancy, you can create an entire different look and feel for a particular tenant. Like you can have a different color scheme for it. One of the latest features we have now in Workplace is the system will automatically come up with those secondary, and I'm not a color person, but this is a big part of accessibility, that is to come up with appropriate secondary color palette, right? So that if you pick a particular color for your header, it's going to come up with a palette for other things that will complement that. I'm not a huge accessibility an expert. I've definitely done a lot with the Moodle team, but it's always amazed me that I'm assuming this is still true, but the biggest visibility issue that the world has is color blindness. That's something that's not actually talked about a lot, right? So that's one of the things that you have to consider. And I think that you're putting a course together, it's the same thing, right? Not everybody looks at colors the same way, and they don't look at the color combinations that you put together. So we've also been trying to help with that as well.
exactly. Thanks so much, Jim.
Jim also mentioned in the chat, and I had mentioned it in the introduction, ADL, the Advanced Distributed Lab, and their development of SCORM and XAPI. So how does that fit into what you were discussing here, John or Jim?
John, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I already put some things in here. So we Moodle supports loading and launching both SCORM compliant and XAPI compliant formats. If you're going to load a XAPI compliant content, if you know about this, you're going to know you are going to need to connect your Moodle system to an LRS, a learning record store, to collect the statements. Moodle does actually have two plugins, and I was, John was saying, we have a vibrant ecosystem. So it's one of our partners, Expudo, has created two plugins. One just supports, if you're using Rise, you're using Adobe Captivate, you publish something as XAPI content, you can load it up as its own content package. But another thing we also have that we've been working to improve actually is a separate plugin that will take all of the events, because Moodle just tracks a tremendous amount of information for what various learners are doing as they move through the system. And that separate plugin will convert all of those events into XAPI statements so that you can then send them to an LRS. And we have several DoD clients that are doing that. We're working pretty heavily with in the DoD space with the idea of the, speaking of ADL, of the total learning architecture, where you've got this an entire ecosystem where a system like Moodle is just one learning source, right? It's just one data source for learning, and there's a bigger ecosystem. All of it is getting fed into an LRS. So, you know, that we're actually doing that now with the Army. You know, it's so yeah, that's also been ongoing as well.
Jim, could you just take a moment and just briefly explain what SCORM and XAPI are for those who might not know?
Sure. SCORM, I mean, SCORM's been around. SCORM was XAPI is you could consider to be the successor to SCORM, and they're both really just they're like formats for putting together content. The SCORM was the first one developed by ADL, and it's really a way to make interactive content and to be able to track it, right? So the idea is it's almost like a mini course. So you know, if you put a SCORM package somewhere and then a learner launches it, there's typically all sorts of things going on. You might you know, click this and click that and navigate to different places and, you know, view a video and do different things. And, you know, take a quiz. It's all kind of embedded, you know, directly within the content, which is one of the things that makes it handy, right? Where you're actually immersed in this piece of content. And then right away, there's right there, there's a, you know, just a quick question to check for your understanding. And the 2004 was when SCORM stopped getting developed any further. And from then on, the ADL focused on XAPI. There's a lot of technical stuff there, but I'd say the big difference between SCORM and XAPI is that XAPI is kind of wide open, and you could, if you wanted, you could literally write an XAPI statement to describe how somebody, like, you know, picked up a cup of coffee and walked across the room, right? Like if you want to like track what somebody's doing. So it can be very granular. It's very flexible. And typically these days, if you did have, you know, if you had Articulate, Storyline, Arise, if you had Adobe Captivate, any of these other systems that make e-learning, when you're done creating something and you want to publish it so that it, you know, it's put into a file that you can load somewhere, you're going to have the option for it to be SCORM or XAPI. The one piece about XAPI is that you typically you've got all these statements. It's kind of like raw data that's basically tracking what somebody did with a piece of content, and you need a place for it to go. And that place is the Learning Record Store, or an LRS. So that's what Learning Locker is right here. We've been doing a lot of work with Yet Analytics. They have an open source, as with Learning Locker, an open source LRS. They're working very heavily with the DoD as well. But yeah, and the other great thing about XAPI that's kind of goes beyond Moodle is that it's not just, it can track anything, like I was saying. So that's the other great, that's the reason that, you know, like the Army and these other, you know, big, big entities in the DoD, that's, I think, why the XAPI is so attractive, because you could have a bunch of virtual learning, or you could have a bunch of different things that are completely outside of the LMS. It can go into that Learning Record Store along with your LMS data, and then you've got that one place that's really tracking that 360 view of what someone's doing.
Let me take it back one step, Jim, because I worked on the original SCORM things, you know, back in the day, and what we were trying to do. For example, California community colleges, every one of the 109 community colleges offers English 101. Yet there was no way of tracking it. So what SCORM would have done was to identify objects within each of those things that were online. And rather than all 109 colleges inventing the same course, they could pull objects from it and build their own. So that's what we were trying to do in the federal government, because we kept inventing the wheel and inventing the wheel. We had the same topic spread over everybody. And so there was an executive order. It was when Clinton was in office, and he did an executive order to the Department of Education, to DoD, and another agency. And all three of us worked on trying to come up with a way of tracking learning objects so that we didn't have to create everything over and over and over again. So when you talk about storing things and being able to grab it off of a shelf and put it into something that's already invented, that's where we've gone, and it's only taken us 30 years, right? So
Well,
thank
thank you for working on that. And I think I'm kind of, I'm excited to meet somebody who worked on it. And that's fantastic. And as you probably know, it's kind of interesting because I probably don't have to tell you this, but XAPI hasn't quite gotten the traction that you think it would have at this point. That's one thing that we can tell you that from our own experience, right?
We help to explain it. That's why.
Yeah, it's almost, I think part of the problem is it's too open. It's so open that it becomes difficult to use, whereas SCORM was, it did certain things and it was easier to understand how you were going to use it. But we do both, and we have a lot of clients using a lot of SCORM content. One good thing that I think is important just for the user experience in Moodle is there's an option for a Moodle course where you can say, I want this course to be a single activity. And that aligns it very well. So you know how, a SCORM package often to me seems like a mini course all by itself. And so you can align that very well. So for instance, if you wanted to have, maybe you wanted to have 5 different SCORM packages, you would just make each, if you wanted, you can make each one of those basically its own Moodle course. As soon as somebody clicked on the course, they would just immediately get launched in the SCORM package. That would be the course. And then you could, like I was saying before, you could sequence all those in a program, right?
Yep.
And that's the other way you could do that and bring it together. But yeah, but that's fantastic. That's great.
John, before we return it to you and the motherboard here, Dolly had a question a couple of things back talking about articulate our lectora storyline and so forth. And so creating materials in those, how do you pick those up in Moodle? Is it pretty seamless or what?
Very seamless. So that's, as we've been talking about with SCORM, that most commonly used content authoring component in Moodle, right? But Moodle, so Moodle, you create those SCORM packages, and then when you're in a Moodle course and you're designing your course, it's as simple, and I can show you this when we move into the demo, but it's as simple as picking that activity in the course, saying, I want to put a SCORM package into this course. You drag it over, you plop it there, you create a couple properties around it in terms of how you want it to behave, and that's it. But course design in Moodle, can you mind if I put a pin in that one? Because I want to show and highlight that during the actual demo.
Go ahead.
When we get to the authoring piece. But yeah, I think you'll find that one of the powerful pieces of Moodle is just the array of different things you can design when you're putting your courses together in the system. So let me just round out the integration partners, right? So we talked about there's 3 main ones. There's Brickfield, and we have others, but I would say the ones that draw the most discussion is around accessibility, analytics, and synchronous tools like we're on now, Zoom, Big Blue Button, Teams, that sort of thing. Moodle takes sort of an agnostic approach to synchronous platforms like meeting tools. But we do recognize Big Blue Button. They're open source. They're not Zoom in the sense that like Zoom too big to come to Moodle and talk to us about deep integration, and same with Teams, right? Whereas Big Blue Button, being open source, we like to marry ourselves with other open source technologies. When you get Moodle, it comes out of the box. I think as it relates to the federal market, I think what is compelling about Big Blue Button is that it's plug-in free, right? So that's important. Nobody has to install or download anything, right, Jim? Is that one of the things that we typically hear come up in jets and the Air Force project is that's one of the compelling parts, and we're seeing that. Yeah,
absolutely. And the fact that it's open source, and
right.
Well, Big Blue Button is, it's separate from Moodle, but I think we probably have the deepest integration out of any LMS. I mean, it's actually just standard now in, there's like basically a free version of it that's just standard in Moodle. the people behind Big Blue Button is called Blindside Network. So they maintain it as an open source tool. They get their revenue from hosting it and supporting it that way. And that's been really important for DoD clients to just to have that expertise, right? Because it's the scaling piece that becomes super important for this. The other thing I would say about one of the key differentiators, at least in Moodle for Big Blue Button, which I think can be really valuable, is there's any activity in Moodle, pretty much any activity, you can set a bunch of conditions to say what means you completed it. And usually for something like Zoom, your options for what it means to complete it are not very robust, right? It's that you joined, right? You joined, you clicked on it, you were there. So one good thing about Big Blue Button and how it works in Moodle is that there's a whole bunch of other conditions that you can set. It could be, did you ask a question? Did you raise your hand? There's all things like that. Did we track that you were actually attending the meeting, for a certain amount of time? So it lets you kind of, try and get more accountability to a certain sense, and then just more of a granular sense of like, what are people doing in these meetings?
Right. And just to amplify what Jim's saying, another key aspect of Big Blue Button is that it is built for more of that training kind of purpose, right? It has more features and capabilities than like your standard Zoom and Teams that are just really designed for static sessions like we're having here today. But, it's more academic focus. It has, more robust functionality when it comes to breakouts and workshops, and it has a lot of analytics in the back in terms of engagement and that sort of thing. So, again, at the end of the day, we're agnostic. Whatever you like to use, you use, right? And so, but we like to highlight Big Blue Button in any kind of open source platform that we recognize that integrates really well with Moodle. So
one more quick thing, just to tie together this piece. Just I haven't circled up recently with Blindside Networks, but I know that they were engaged in a project to output engagement data for users in Big Blue Button meetings as XAPI data, so that it could be put into an LRS. So that's also coming.
Right. Good point. So that sort of rounds out this concept of a TLA, right? Which means could be all these complementary tools and platforms and companies coming together to form that ecosystem that we find ourselves playing in the federal space. So the way we work with a lot of our government agencies is we come in as a sub, right? Because oftentimes it's hard for agencies to kind of even work with us, because this is still very much of an emerging market for us. Admittedly we're rookies in this space. We don't have our GSAs or these contracting vehicles in place. We're striving for that. So typically what we find ourselves in is, we find ourselves teaming up with, either larger integrators, federal integrators out there, like the IBMs of the world and the SAICs and the GDITs, but also smaller, like, service disabled, small business partnerships out there that allow our government agencies to reach us, right? Because that's really been something that that's been a bit of a learning process for us. So I did want to highlight the fact that, sometimes in order to reach us, we may need to, use one of our federal partners. It's probably worth noting, it could be that some attendees in here are, maybe accessing or consuming Moodle through Powertrain or USA Learning. We are in active discussions with them to see if there's an opportunity to bring, or sort of a broader or a wider net, if you will, of being able to allow more federal agencies to reach us more, just giving them the ability to reach us a little more effectively. So that's that's a project in process right here. I'll skip by a few of these things. This is MoodleNet is a bit of a new endeavor for us. Think of MoodleNet as a like a commons where you can establish a community where other agencies or even just other groups within or other people or other individuals throughout your institution can share and find open educational resources. You can share courses, documents, content, and whatnot. It's just a place that kind of provides a little more of a social kind of aspect to Moodle, in the sense of just collaborating and working with others within your world, if you will, for when it comes to sharing, a variety of different content and courses. Jim, do you need me to go a little further than that, or that? He's probably on mute.
I was on mute. No, I just put I'll just put this in the chat too, but there, one thing to keep in mind about MoodleNet is that I just put it in the chat. If anyone wants to go to it, it's super simple to join. There is a public, there's a global public site that Moodle maintains. So you can just go there and you can just grab a whole bunch of different content. But you can also you can host your own private instance or semi-private instance. So that's just something else to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So if you did have, say, I don't know, a consortium of different organizations with their own Moodle sites, or just different entities within one Moodle site, and you wanted one place for them to share, you can do that as well. And the other, just a key piece to what you can do with MoodleNet is you can send content directly to your Moodle site and to a course you're in, and you can even pull content from MoodleNet into a course. So, like, if you're going to add something to a course, one of your options is to connect to MoodleNet and bring something in from there, and that's both different pieces of content, like videos, frameworks, competency frameworks, but it's also entire sites, entire courses. You can just pull an entire course and bring it into your Moodle site as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. All right, I'm going to start moving some of these topics over to you. Jim not only works closely with our on our federal projects, but he also heads up product initiatives at our organization. So, Moodle 4.x, we're around 4.2 right now, right, Jim? And so when I say Moodle 4.2 or the version, this also means Moodle Workplace, because if you remember me mentioning towards the beginning part of this session, Moodle Workplace shares the same code base, right? There are some separate sprints and separate ways that the products get developed, but I feel I'll just turn this over to Jim. Just if you want to just talk for a couple of minutes about where Moodle 4.x is going from a high level.
And I just want to know, I've got an invitation to start my video, and I wasn't planning on being on video, so I'm wearing I'm just wearing a t-shirt here. I don't have the good clothes on here, but I'll turn it on so everyone can see. So just a couple things to say about this. Moodle's been around for 20 years, right? And one of the things that the Moodle team did with Moodle 4 was to really focus on bringing Moodle into the truly into the 21st century, and really focusing on making it cleaner and simpler and easier to use. They really focused on reducing the amount of clicks, kind of getting back to a certain degree to accessibility and UX. It just really focused on UX to just, from the moment you would land in Moodle, that you could get to wherever you needed to get to, especially for learners. And like accessibility, I would say that this project to improve the UX for Moodle, it didn't end with the Moodle 4.0 release. It's ongoing. So yeah. Yeah. and so I think that, yeah, some of the things that you're seeing here, this is, they've got some new leadership, which has been really, really fantastic this last couple of years. We've got new leadership for the product team in, for, you know, the Moodle HQ, as we call them. John, should I just mention how this works? Is that worth talking about in
Yeah,
terms of?
I think that's
our-
better, because especially as it relates to, you know,
Okay, right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'd say that, you know, we're Moodle US, right? We're kind of we're the services provider for Moodle in the United States. We have our own development team, and we do our own customizations, but the bulk of what's happening with Moodle is, its primary headquarters is in Australia, and then a lot of our developers are in Europe and South America, pretty, dispersed. But they're the ones who are constantly putting out new versions of Moodle, and new versions of Moodle Workplace. And we work extensively with them to bring in feedback from our clients, from prospects, to kind of help guide where things might be going. And in the last couple of years, they've really focused on improving their product team. They've got a new director of product, and she's been really great about just kind of a top-down reassessment of everything. So one of the things that you're seeing that John pointed out is, that roadmap, and you can see how they've started to kind of look at, like how they're kind of changing how they do things. So you're going to see here that they've got a framework now for creativity, collaboration, and outcomes. So a lot of this has to do with the different things that go on in an enterprise platform. Outcomes are always going to be about gathering data one way or another. The collaboration is going to be between both learners and between educators. And then the creativity in this case is really just about how do you configure a Moodle site to do what you want it to do. I'd say that some of the biggest things that I've seen, as John mentioned, basically what happens with Moodle Workplace has its own product team. So when the core LMS, 4.2 comes out, usually it's about a month later, and then Moodle Workplace will come out with its, leveraging everything in the core, but also bringing in some new pieces. And I don't know if we want to get too far with this, John, if you're going to look at we're going to get into a demo, but there's quite a few things. Here's one thing I would say that there's one of the trends I'm seeing that I think is really good is that John mentioned that, you've got these, we have multi-tenancy, so you can kind of, have your own unique environment. It's not a complete, environment in terms of being, unique, right? There's still quite a few things that happen at the platform level. And, I use that same analogy that John uses. It's like you can, if you're in an apartment building, there's a lot you can do in your apartment. A lot of times there's less that you can do in the hallway and the stairs, right? And the front piece of it. So I think that's where a lot of this is going with multi-tenancy, is to give more agency to tenants. So there's quite a bit of things you can do for like creating your own custom dashboards and whatnot, where it's all at the tenant level.
Cool.
I'll stop there.
So before this is sort of my last slides before we move into a 15 or 10-minute product demo, but where we're seeing sort of the core benefits of the relationship between Moodle US and our federal clients is, again, going back to that whole concept of these folks being able to work directly with the mothership, and we do our ongoing work in this space, we're developing more and more expertise in this space. We're gathering more and more data on what is important to those in this space, and are using folks like Jim to funnel that kind of data into our development, right? And to shape where workplace is going forward, right? So due to the fact that we're becoming more involved with these large scale DoD, we can start to look at extending some reciprocity across some of the other agencies we're working with, right? Because a lot of times the things that we're solving in one agency is important to the other. So we're looking at that from a development standpoint and strategizing on how to incorporate that as part of our enhancements going forward to meet the needs of this ever evolving requirements that we come in contact with as we work with more and more agencies in this space. So
John, can I just real quick, just to jump in?
Yeah.
One of the things that I, usually have a product lens on, and one of the things that I'm always doing is looking for patterns across all of our clients. So that a lot of what happens with the DoD, our DoD clients, the things they want are the things our other clients want.
Exactly.
And the Moodle product team, the higher level Moodle product team have been really responsive to the needs of the Army and the Air Force. And I think it's been an especially great collaboration because of the scaling. The Air Force has almost 1 million users in a single Moodle site. They put a lot of users, an incredible amount of users in courses. These last 2 years, we've really collaborated on a lot of different things that, a lot of this is just, you can't imagine what an enterprise system needs until an enterprise system is up and running and it needs it. So we've been getting all of that feedback back to Moodle Workplace and that product team. And as far as I'm concerned, it's just been fantastic because it's going to benefit any enterprise client who's using Moodle Workplace. It's going to help. So it's been a great couple of years with that.
So basically what Jim just said really summarizes both of these, these slides that I have up. It's just really the more past performance we find ourselves engaged with, the more value we're able to offer not only the clients we're supporting now, but the new ones that come aboard. All right. So before I go into Q&A and open discussions, because that'll be my last slide, I'll open up can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I just have a couple demo environments up just to, for those that there could be folks attending here today that probably haven't seen Moodle in 15 years. And so the first thing we want to do is show that Moodle continues to provide modern experiences, right? Like as Jim said, to meet the 21st century learner, right? And so everything about at this point, Moodle is so feature rich that it practically washes your car on Sundays. So I think that the development teams and product teams are sort of starting to focus more on UI and UX and making that experience as efficient and as smooth as possible, so that when learners come in, they know exactly what they need to do, where they need to go, and it's not that many clicks to get there. We're also giving clients more flexibility on sort of what they see when users first log in. For example, I'm logged into this demo instance, and I've come to more of like a homepage, which is sort of a place right now where you can spotlight certain learning opportunities, content, feature content, kind of like the Netflix thing. I don't want to say that too loudly because this is not Netflix yet, where, people who like this course are also going to like this course. That's getting a little into the AI where some of our clients are pushing us to. So we hope, I know that's a big buzzword today, so I'm sure it may even come up in this session, but that's sort of where we think this is all going. But we give you a lot of flexibility in terms of what do you want your learners to see as they, from the first click, from login to when they get their certificate and they log out, right? And so this goes back to my point about Moodle's not an LMS in a box, right? So you can control what users see, each click of the way. Some clients might not even like this or want to bypass this. And when learners log in, they want them to go right to their My Learning page where I see what I'm enrolled in, what I have coming up, what's due, how far along have I progressed, and that sort of thing. So here I could just pick up right from where I left off, and that sort of thing. As Jim noted before, I have a couple custom dashboards up here too. So you can create custom dashboards for different types of users that are coming into the system. I could be someone coming into Moodle and all I care about is I don't care about courses, I don't care about content. I just want to see, my team, right? And I want to see how my team is progressing through their learning journeys, and be able to get the reports that are associated with them and drill into them. I can masquerade as them. I can that could be the simple role I have in the system. So this gets back again, can't emphasize enough just how configurable Moodle is and how we work with our clients to ensure that we're molding Moodle around your specific use cases versus you trying to stuff your requirements or squeeze your requirements into a closed walled LMS environment. And so that we find is an advantage. So let me just, as I scroll across some of these other environments, you can see just how flexible you can get in some of the visualizations here. This actually happens to be a real client of ours. And if you haven't seen Moodle in a long time, most would say this isn't Moodle. Well, it is. And so it's pretty neat because this is a client of ours where they have like an open system like this. We're not showing anything that you can't go to yourself. Anyone here can go to university.vectorworks.net, click on buildings, and then start to explore or filter courses that you can take because it's all open. For example, these are all Moodle courses. Jim had touched on this earlier. This organization is actually utilizing that single activity course format where when I go to, first I can open up this card and see what this is all about. Sorry, I have to keep moving my Zoom panel around to close things up. So I can open up this card and see what this course is all about, or just jump right into it. And this is going to take me right into that SCORM, as Jim was pointing out earlier before. You wouldn't even know that you're in a Moodle course because this is the course format they have set up. And boom, here I am right into a course. So I'm just, I'm skimming across a couple environments, sandbox environments, just to, again, start to, that's not a good one, start to provide you with an appreciation of just how flexible, how configurable Moodle can be for your particular deployment. Let's see here. So let me just give you a tour of the page here. So let me go back to the home. So one of the other things I want to draw your attention to, workplace. This is the multi-tenancy that you see here, right? So you can have all these different spaces. These are my different tenants that I can, because I'm a super admin, I can see across. But if I was a learner or even a site administrator, I wouldn't be able to do this. I would only see the tenant that I belong to. So creating a tenant in Workplace is as simple as going to the tenants button and creating a new tenant. Sorry, I have to keep dragging this thing around. And there you go. So when I create a tenant, it's going to give me the option now to say, okay, do I want to start defining the types of roles that we're going to have in here? Do we want to set up its own authentication or single sign-on preferences? Do we want to, now we can get into the branding, what kind of color schemes, logos, visualizations do we want to bring into this tenant? Do we want to create custom dashboards, right? Like you could have different dashboards for different roles and permissions of users that are coming into the environment, and that sort of thing. But you'll see here now that tenant A is already there. So the shell of the tenant within a couple clicks is already established. And at that point, it's almost, this is what I was mentioning before, like with multi-tenancy almost causes you to do is to step back from the LMS and to collaborate with your colleagues on what is a tenant in our world. Do we want to set aside a separate e-learning initiative that we want to confine to its own specific tenant where they have your own learners, your own audience members, your own content curriculum, and have it be completely separate from some other initiative, right? And that's what we're finding that multi-tenancy is causing our clients to do there. And they work with folks like Jim to workshop through, when is a tenant necessary and when isn't it? And that's typically where we come into play to help you solve those decisions.
John, it might be just a quick, might be a good time to, since you're looking at the tenant selector, might be a good time to show that shared space, because we got some questions about sharing courses or and sharing competencies, but that's where you can do it. So you could share in that. Yeah.
You want to go ahead and take that piece?
I'll just say that in the shared space, you can create certifications, programs, organizational structures, dynamic rules, and reports. And then when you it's not especially granular. You can't target which tenant you want to share it to, but you put anything you put in there. Essentially, a manager in another tenant could pull that piece of curriculum down and use it for that particular tenant. It's especially useful. Well, there's many uses for it, but the reporting piece is especially useful because the reports end up being like templates, right? So you can create a whole bunch of reports and share them. If somebody from another tenant pulls down a report, it's only going to show data for the users in that tenant. It's not going to share data, across tenants. So it's a good way to make a bunch of, if you want to, provide your, some good reporting for your tenants. It's a good thing too.
Yeah, really good point.
John,
Moodle
a quick question. I noticed that some of the languages in Australian English as opposed to USA English. Is there a way of switching back and forth between those two? And then a third question or a second question on that is, what about going to different languages? Can you translate this to German easily? Is there a button, or are you working on it, or what?
Yeah, well, I'll take that, and Jim, just expand upon what I may have missed. But the first part of the question, absolutely, right? So we have access to all the language strings inside the system. So where you see Australian version of, like, say, a term called organizations, and yeah, that can be easily changed. Everything can really be pretty much changed where it's open source, right? So we have access to the underlying code. When it comes to language localization, I feel like, Moodle is second to none out there because it's used so extensively around the world. It supports virtually every single language that exists out there. So
I thought that would be the answer, but I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say that's certainly one of the many strong points of Moodle is because it's just used so much around the world in so many different countries. I think that is taken into consideration and has been taken into consideration over the years from a development standpoint, and ensuring that it's meeting a worldwide community versus a specific, market, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So I'm not going to go too deep in this. I did want to make sure I spend like 5 minutes going into a course, but we talked a lot about, like, in the beginning part of my session, about like programs, being able to create programs, and certifications, which are those recertifications, and creating dynamic rules, which helps establish that automation and multi-tenancy. This launcher right here is essentially your workplace launcher. I want to make sure that I reemphasize everything else under the hood here is all core Moodle code. So if you're running Moodle today, everything else under here, outside of what you're seeing in this launcher, is all core Moodle capability, right? So this is,
and there's also the in that launcher, just to kind of, it really helps to show how this works. John is in right now as a site administrator, so he has site level access to everything, which is why he has the ability to go into and go to different tenants if he wants. Even if you can make somebody a tenant admin, and then they're just going to have a smaller set of administrative capabilities that's only for that particular tenant that they're in. But you can see how it all breaks down in this launcher, because everything above that line right there, that thin line, that horizontal line, those are all the things that would be at a per tenant, right? So those are all the things that you would be working with that would be different for your tenant, because John's in as a site admin. There's an extra piece called global, and those are things on the bottom that are things that are at the site level that go across all tenants.
yeah, good point. Thank you for that clarification. I'll just take a minute here to just talk about the right-hand side of this page. What you're seeing here are what we refer to in the Moodle world as blocks. These are additional components that you can add to the right-hand side of your page, either at the site level or individually at the course level. So if I go into this course right here, I can have a different set of blocks. Blocks are completely optional. Think of them as sort of little widgets where you can, if I go into edit mode and I go to add a block here, it could be that you're adding like, a folder. Maybe you want to just give your learners quick access to a folder where there could be instruction manuals, or it's a syllabus, or you want to add, RSS feed, or there's a lot of different blocks in here. I don't want that to cause any feeling that this is complicated. It's just, you always almost want to approach Moodle saying, what do I want my users to experience when they're in a course? Then come to Moodle instead of like trying to figure out what features, because Moodle it's just going to conform to whatever it is you're trying to set up when it gets down to the actual learning that users are going to engage with.
And I would say too, this is a good example of what happened with Moodle 4 in terms of just improving navigation. With Moodle 4, it's very clear where if you're moving around at the site level, you're always going to do it at that top bar, right? That top bar where it says, home, catalog, and dashboards. That's all going to be how you move around in the site. Once you get into a course, you'll always have that piece on the left that John's showing there, where you can very easily navigate. And that piece on the left, that course index, will also act as a progress indicator. So if you have set up different activities to have completion criteria, you don't have to. I think in this case it hasn't been. But if you do, then each time you complete something in here, you're going to get a little green dot that says you've done it. So it makes it really easy to know not only where you are in here, but what you've done and what you still need to do.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So again, these are just it's completely optional. Oftentimes, clients will just want to get the bones of their course up. They'll want to put their SCORM contents in there, their feedback, their surveys, their assessments, all the different things that you can do within a course. But oftentimes, as their courses evolve, a designer might say, "Gee, I wish I could just put a little course calendar over here, or I wish I could put like a comment section, and that's all. That's all what Moodle's about. I think the term Moodle itself is all about tinkering around and making sure that as your courses evolve, or as you think about new ways to make learning more engaging and more fun, or more interactive for your clients, it goes back to that tagline that we can almost steal, whereas Moodle has an app for that, right? So as you think about the right-hand side of the page, don't feel as if you have to add things here. Just think of this as, gee, if I'm creating this quality as advisor basics, it would be neat to be able to provide, to add, a completion progress bar over here or something like that. So that's the way to think of of this. Almost like if you could see my Chrome browser here, it's like they're like Chrome plugins, right? It's the same kind of concept. They're just widgets that you can bring into your Moodle environment to customize to whatever it is you're trying to do. So the center of the screen here is where really the learning happens, right? So this is where you can come in and add all the different things that you deem to be like a learning experience, right? This is really where the rubber meets the road. This is really what learners are doing in here. They're coming in here to learn and get assessed. Again, I'm big into analogies. If I might be dating myself here, but if you remember Bob Ross, the guy with the big hairdo, these do paintings on Channel 2. Whenever I turn edit mode into a course and I go into design mode, I think of him because Moodle design, course design in Moodle is an art, right? I've seen people make terrible courses and great LMSs and great courses and terrible, and good LMSs, right? So when you're designing something in Moodle's just going to say, when you click on add an activity or resource, and this goes back to Jolly's question about adding SCORM, Moodle, it's like it's like Bob Ross's palette, right? You have all these things that you can add into a course. Now, granted, most clients that we bump into, hate to say, they build something and articulate their storyline. They put it into a Moodle course and they call it a day. But Moodle, whatever you think is a learning experience, Moodle is going to allow you to do. So it could be that in as your course evolves, or maybe for one course more, maybe you want to do more things or set up more things in the course other than SCORM. For example, you could create, when you're in a course, you might just record yourself here. I can go in, edit this section, launch the video camera, and maybe record myself saying, hey, welcome to this Quality Advisor Basic Certification course. Below my head, you're going to have a discussion forum, and we'd like you to go in and introduce yourself, and that's mandatory. You can't move on to the next part of the course until you do so. And then after that, you're going to jump into a SCORM activity, and then as a part of that section, we want you to provide some general feedback on what you think you've learned or whatever it may be. And so I always say, a good course tells a good story and it engages the learner. And Moodle's just gonna, most people think of, okay, it's a course, we're gonna put SCORM in there, right? I just want to emphasize that when you, going back to the Bob Ross analogy, with Moodle, you can add practically anything you want in here, everything from, assignments to appointment bookings to even like setting up a glossary. Maybe in your world, I know the federal government has basically every kind of acronym possible, right? So you can use the glossary tool so that whenever you're highlighting over certain text, that a definition comes up above it. You could be adding in things like H5P. I won't go into that right now, but if those in attendance know what H5P is, it's just another set of additional authoring tools, interactive authoring tools. Adding in like, Teams meeting, here's the SCORM package. So if I wanted to go add a SCORM package here, I click on SCORM, give it a title, description, and literally all I do is just drag the zip file onto this page. And then I can go through some additional properties in terms of how do I want that SCORM to serve up? Do I want it to be embedded in the course? Do I want it to come up in another pop-in, pop-up, tab, that sort of stuff. And then you can get into properties where practically every single activity you put into a course, you have that activity completion, which means that you can ensure that users just can't go through the entire course. They have to complete certain things, maybe get a minimum score of before they can move on to the next piece of content. And then as we noted earlier, you can get into situations where you can assign outcomes or competencies at the activity level, or maybe you set up an outcome at the end of the course where it says that, you complete this quiz and you get a 90 and above, then we deem you competent in this particular area. Let me just stop there for questions, because when it gets into course design, that tends to be a pretty active interaction. But just know that when it comes to adding any kind of piece of content into Moodle, the sky's the limit, as well as assessment.
Let me ask you this then. So many people who are developing courses now are not trained instructional designers. There's subject matter experts at SMEs, but they're not IDs. So how or does Moodle help them? I mean, I love all the things you've got, but I can see it would be really kind of confusing for somebody who really isn't that. So, okay. So tell me
That's a key service, because you're absolutely right, Carla. Like what will happen to us in many cases is, a client will come to us and they say, we need to launch, we're going to launch Moodle, but rather than going out and hiring instructional designers, can we lean on you for help? So, and what we mean by help is not just how to use the tools in Moodle when you're doing course design, but actually develop learning content and develop our courses for us. We have that expertise, and that's one of the core services that we extend to our clients is learning design, where they're absolutely amazing. Like they will really get in and sink their teeth into your instructional design goals or your course goals, objectives, and all that kind of stuff, and really help you put a solid course together that will engage the learner and have the right type of assessment and outcome for that particular course, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Do most of your clients ask for that? Is that an additional whatever, or?
Yeah, this is definitely one of those areas where, okay, let's hit stop when we're in these kinds of like discussions. And if they come to us with that, what we do is we'll conduct a formal discovery or scope where we, meet with the client. We'll try to do an assessment as to, what kind of content they already have. Maybe they're developing video or maybe they want to use H5P. We try to understand how they're going to assess them, how they're going to collaborate, and really to go through a formal discovery. And out of that discovery will come, hey, here's our recommendation. We're going to recommend, 200 hours of instructional design and course and content development for you, so that we can help you get, because let's face it, that's the biggest lift when it comes to an LMS. No LMS is going to build your course for you, right? And a good course could take, 40 to hundreds of hours, right? Depends on what you're trying to do. And what kind of content. Like some are doing really elaborate, like video production kind of like recordings, and they're bringing, it really depends, right? Like some courses are very lightweight. They might just come in, go through a quick SCORM, like, and call it a day. Others, they're getting deep into assessment, using the quiz engine, getting into the competency taxonomies, outcomes, rubrics, advanced level kind of course experiences. So it really varies. It just varies in terms of what it is you're trying to do in the system, because that really is the biggest lift, if that makes sense.
I would also,
That's the thing we run into so often, and we've got people who are instructional designers by assignment. I mean, that's the term we're using in dissertations and other academic projects now. And all it means is I've got somebody who knows something, but they don't know enough.
Yeah.
And how do we fix that? How do we change that and work around it? Go ahead, Jim. Sorry to cut you off.
oh, that's okay. I mean, to cut you off. I was just going to say that I tend to think of, the difference between Moodle, the maker of Moodle and Moodle US is that I consider us to be in the solutions business. We are not in the Moodle business. We're not even in the LMS business. We are trying to provide solutions, and that's how I see what we do, right? And for some of our clients, the solution means just, can you just efficiently host our Moodle site? We've got it. Thank you very much. That's it. But most of the time, it's way over on the other end of the spectrum. And that's why I think we have a really talented, team of learning designers, but that's how they approach it. We've got a huge toolkit at our disposal for Moodle, but they tend to just look at, just tell us what you, forget Moodle. The first conversation should not even be about Moodle. It's like, what are you
Yeah.
trying to do? What are you trying to do? And we'll help you get there, and we'll figure out what you can do, on your own, what you want to do on your own, and how we can step in and help you. Because it's really just a spectrum from one end to the other.
100%. Absolutely spot on, Jim. Thanks for that. I couldn't have said it better myself. We got 15 minutes left. I want to be mindful of time. I was actually kind of surprised we went as far as, but we did cover a ton. And I'm happy to flip over here and put my contact information up. And if anyone here wants to get into a deeper, like a level 2 kind of demo where we get in deeper into course design or into programs and certification, how to set certain things up in Moodle or differences between Moodle Workplace, happy to do that. But my goal in opening up those sandboxes wasn't to conduct a full-on demo, was more of like a visualization. Here's what Moodle Workplace looks like to a lot of our clients today, and go from there. But I did want to save a little bit of time to answer any questions, and also to be respectful of you, Russ and Carla, to have any closing remarks on your end.
Well, I only need 30 seconds, so let's Tom Harriman, you've got some questions. Come off mute and talk to us about what you're doing with Moodle.
So we've had a Moodle up and running for almost 10 years here in a couple of months. So we've been doing this for quite a while. We originally did it because we had a large group of people, several hundred people, that couldn't access our internal LMS. And so we needed an alternative solution. So we went to a Moodle platform, and we actually run 2 different LMSs still to support that. Only because of our infrastructure and structure and what we've been thinking about, right? So, yeah, we have probably we're probably over 100, maybe 120 to 130 different courses. Mm-hmm. And now we've actually started moving some of the courses that were in the other LMS into the Moodle platform, because it's easier for us to share them between internal and external parts of the agency, right? So, and so, yeah, we have a variety of stuff, right? We have self-paced stuff. We have stuff that the instructors do. They teach every 6 hours a day using Moodle, right? So, and they do that with teams. So just with the tools that we have available to us, right? Sure. So, and like I say, we've been doing it. We started out with one course, and like I said, we're probably pushing 120 to 130 different learning things that are occurring inside the environment, right? And I have 4 instances that we oversee: a sandbox, a development test, and an actual production environment. Mm-hmm. And so, we actually have a group of content that's actually developed by a contractor. So they actually develop all the content, load it right into the platform for us, and it's launched, right? So we don't have very much for it to do other than they put it right in the Moodle platform directly. In other instances, myself and another administrator, we help create the content, right? Whether it's, an H5P exam, or whether it's a full-blown quiz, right? We have quiz banks that have 1,000 questions in them. So, and it's all randomized, right? So the quiz is randomly generated no matter what. We actually are piloting a program where a number of facilities are actually going in and taking exams inside there, instead of, in the past, we would administer these exams with a paper copy. And so now we're transitioning to where this is all done remote, which is a big deal. I mean, it is a really big deal. So the idea of having some of these different capabilities, whether it's tenants or anything, is kind of an interesting idea. Instead of having 2 LMSs, maybe there's a way that you could have one LMS, essentially, with different tenants accessing it, right? But those individuals and those people are all left remotely, right? I mean, they're individual. they can't come in contact with each other, right? So
Sure.
all their data is stored in 2 different locations, right? It's not merged. And I just think that's an extreme, it gives us a lot more flexibility and a lot less restrictions on how to manage that data. So, but yeah, we probably manage, well, I looked the other day, we had 517 plugins installed, but that's part of core, right? So I think we have 61 added plugins that we manage. Now and we've had to push this through FedRAMP all on our own. We've had to turn off a bunch of stuff because it wouldn't pass the FedRAMP scan. So that's a separate conversation we probably need to have, because there are some things that aren't coming out good on the scan. So we've had to disable them in the Moodle platform. But those are all things that can be worked out, right? It's just the right people talking at the right time, right? So, but anyway, I would like to follow up with one of you, and I've got one of your emails, and so I'll get back with you later on some other outside demos discussion.
Yeah, John, I put my email in there, but please, Tom, please connect with both of us. We'd love to just learn more.
No, and I will. I've talked to our lead administrator, and he told me to go ahead and reach out to you. I'll include him on it because he's the decision maker, of course. And but I think there's a worthwhile demo that we could. They need to see this. The people that make the decision. So good job. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It was very good.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Any other open questions or comments, feedback?
Tom, I was just wondering, would you say who you're with and what your job responsibilities are?
Carla, you're really pushing your luck there.
Yeah.
So I work for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Have been the lead administrator of the Moodle LMS for the last 8.5 years. I recently turned it over. It's time to move on to the next project. Maybe it's Moodle Workplace. Anyway, but anyway, I've been with the agency for 17 years. We currently run 2 LMSs, Cornerstone and the Moodle platform.
You hear that a lot.
and it's, it's just the nature of the beast, right? Yeah, and I'm not, it's for a lot of different reasons, and that's beyond what we're talking about here.
Sure.
And I also oversee and have been the lead administrator and designer and developer for our MediaWiki platform. So we actually run a MediaWiki platform internal to the agency for knowledge sharing. And one of my biggest frustrations right now is I cannot connect the Moodle platform to my wiki platform.
Maybe
But
Moodle
that's a separate
might work there.
What's that?
Maybe Moodle that might be a path forward for you there.
Maybe. I don't know the answer to that. That's why I was interested in additional conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
So is there anything else, Carly, you know? You want to know how I have 5 grandchildren? No, I'm just kidding.
Two sides. So do you train? Okay, I used to live in California, a couple of miles from San Onofre. So do you train the people who are working at other nuclear institutions and organizations, or what?
No, ma'am. What we do is we train the people that inspect those facilities. So we have a cadre of inspectors that actually work at each one of those facilities, 2, 3, or 4, depending on the size of it. And they actually conduct the inspection, or they oversee oversee is probably not the right word. Let me make sure I don't get in trouble here. We train inspectors that go in and inspect to make sure the facilities are meeting the regulations that they've been licensed to.
Interesting.
And that's just the nuclear power plants. We also are involved in a variety of other things that are licensed throughout the United States.
Well, thank you.
And so that's the basics of it. But yeah, so we just train inspectors that go in and inspect these facilities. We don't the organizations have their own training organizations and train their own people. We then, the operators of the plant that physically operate the nuclear power plants, we actually administer their licensing exam and then give them a license to operate it. So we oversee that. So that's kind of in a nutshell.
The interesting thing I constantly find is that at the core of every institution is training, education, helping people advance. I mean, that's what we do. So it's not, it's not just selling Moodle, it's truly teaching and learning and all the theories that go along with it and really helping our culture advance and continue to improve. It's such an important thing that all of us do. And, we're usually kind of a little bit lower on the pay scale, and first thing that gets cut is training and education. And I've never understood that. It's so important that what we do is really here. So John and Jim, we're kind of coming to the end here. Any closing comments you'd like to make?
Well, other than the fact that what you just mentioned there is also very much aligned to Moodle's core mission and values. So I encourage you to go out to moodle.com, moodle.org, and that what you just stated is very much aligned to what Moodle stands for as well, and its underlining core beliefs and missions and mission. Open education.
It is.
Mhm.
Jim?
It was a pleasure meeting all of you and sharing Moodle. So yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank our board members, Dolly Holden and Helen Chamberlain, for being online with us today. We do appreciate that. And to all of you who were with us today, thank you for logging on, and let people know about what we're doing here. USDLA or FGDLA, excuse me, United States Distance Learning Association, and Federal Government Distance Learning Association are both really important organizations. We'd like to have your membership if you're not already a member, so long as you're working for the federal government or in some way, entertain you as a member. So thank you for being with us today, and that concludes our webinar. Good night.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thanks again.
Thank you.